Hi guys, Rob here again with another video. Good to see you here. Though I can't see you, but I'm hoping you're out there in YouTube land. And I just thought I'd do a little video about practice because over the last few days I've been getting the practice pad back out. I was in the studio for the last 2 weeks, pretty much solidly, with two different acts. And Alan Pinder was one and the other one was Storm Dever. And I haven't had a lot of time or felt like getting back to the pad and practicing. So, I mean, it takes me a few days to get over that sort of whirlwind of session stuff because you're writing out charts, you're working, your mind's working in a different way. You're thinking of being creative with songs. You're not thinking so much about, well, obviously you're thinking about drums, but you're not thinking about the drum parts in a sort of technical way. You're thinking more musically, and then the technique obviously comes out through the music. That's the way it should happen. So, you don't really feel like coming home after a session and sitting down on the practice pad. And of course, on Saturday, I had a really good gig in Fairford with my quartet. And that was awesome at the Palmer Hall. Lovely crowd, lovely room, 50 people, sold it out. We were very happy. What more can you say? Anyway, and on Sunday, I had private drum lessons. But what is it now? It's Tuesday. So yesterday, I spent quite a bit of time on the pad. And I spent a bit of time this morning before I came on, actually, just recording a few more things that I'll be dropping, as they say, over the next couple of days, including one I did in 7/8, which was fun. Been listening to a lot of minimalistic music of late. Steve Reich and Philip Glass are my two favourite composers in that world. And I've been listening to some of their works. So I wanted to do something just a little bit different. So, yeah, I'll be posting those. So anyway, I wanted to talk about this whole situation because at clinics and sometimes online, I get asked questions about practice and so on and so forth. And, I've talked about practice on the kit, developing phrases and things like that. But of course, all those phrases can develop way back the line, off of the drum set, off of the rehearsal room or whatever, and back to your front room or your bedroom or wherever you practice your practice pad stuff or hotel room, whatever. And, I just wanted to spend a little bit of time just talking about this world of practice on the practice pad. So firstly, I think it's extremely important when people say, do you still do it? Yes, I mean, the videos sort of prove that I still do it, but I guess I could just be doing that to say, hey, I'm on the practice pad. But I do still spend a lot of time on the practice pad. And I do endorse the Bill Sanders pads. And I've got the upright one on a stand, and I've got the little touring dinky one, and then the next size up, the next size up, the next snare drum size up, and also the snare drum sized brush practice pad as well, which I know a lot of people in the States when they've messaged me about some of my brush videos. And I must do some more of those actually on the practice pad. But they would say, where the hell did you get that pad? It's amazing. So hopefully Bill has got some sales from that. I love the smell of those pads. I love the feel of the rubber of those pads. I love the sound of the stick coming down on the rubber on those pads. There's just something about it, very tactile, you see. And I really enjoy that. Just as much as part of the process as what I'm playing is enjoying the sound. And I've also got the Bill Sanders kit, which isn't out as often, the practice kit. But I can still use that as well, which has got a bass drum pad and two rack toms, snare and a floor, on a rack kind of system, which is also very, very cool. So yeah, practice. I do still practice, and I think I've just written a few bullet points down here. I mean, obviously the first one is why practice. I mean, any practice we do is helping us in our performances. It's also helping us build our creativity. And it's also providing us with all the kind of grab bag and, toolkit, all those analogies of stuff you get together in your armory of things for when you're actually performing. And also just playing on the drums yourself, a rehearsal room, or as I say, wherever you practice. It's really important. You find out what you can't do and you find out what you can do and what you've perfected, if there is such a thing, or you're on top of, let's say. And it also demonstrates, it's like a mirror, it demonstrates things that you can't do very well. So, my way of doing it is for where I am in my musical life and everything. I try and just look at it as a way of being creative and trying to stitch ideas together. Hence why they become these little practice pad videos on YouTube and Instagram. That's the way that I like to do it. I also will sit down, and if there's something that I've seen a certain drummer do online or at a clinic or something, obviously that's the first place I'll work on it, getting the stickings together, getting the dynamics together. And of course, all of that you can do on a snare drum, I know, but the sound of the snare and the drums and the cymbals is what we want. They're supposed to resonate and, you know, be in tune with each other and have a sound. But when we're working on stuff, I think it's best to have none of that extra ring. You want the clarity of the sound, just to be very clean. And then you can also work on the dynamics. It's slow enough to work on that. You can hear the difference between a grace note and an accented note. All those things are really important. And that's, a practice pad is the place where you can do that. You know, it's almost like when you get to the pad, it's almost like you're doing an MOT on your hands, if you like, you know. You're in a certain area where you can do that. It's a specific thing rather than, as I say, on the drum kit where we can work on other things, you know. So yeah, so practice is really important, and enjoying your practice is important. You know, setting yourself like little challenges with your practice and a little practice diary or something, just so you can jot things down that you want to work on. You can also go back and see things that you have worked on, and also see things that you may have worked on ages ago and you've forgotten, because that happens. I do that all the time, and then I try and bring it back into my playing. You know, and I just think it's interesting. Some days you're going to play on the pad and you're going to be like, phooey. It's not going to work, and that's fine too. That's all right. You know, but a lot of the time you should look at that, those moments with sticks in hand, practice pad, no other distractions, no phone on, no laptop on or anything. You know, just you and the pad and your brain, you know, working on your hands, you know, working on your art, working on what you are, you know, the machine, before we can take it to the drum kit and let it all loose. You know, there's so much we can do on the pad, as I say, to hone and tune in and tune up. As I say, the MOT thing is quite a good way of looking at it. And I've got a few points here on the laptop because I thought it was quite important. And then I think it's important to keep up the practice on things that you can't do. So loads of the time we're playing stuff that is already programmed in here. We know how to play it. We enjoy playing it. It's just kind of repeated practice, and that's good. That's brilliant. That helps us play our set lists the same every time. You know, that helps us do so many things, perform drum solos and so on and so forth. It's really, really important. But sometimes it's good to actually, you know, put the brakes on a bit and go, you know what, that phrase, that rudiment, that sticking, that accenting, I've never worked on it enough. You know, I sort of throw it out there, but it's never sort of 100%. As I say, I don't know what is 100% because I think we're all working on everything all of the time anyway. But you know what I mean? What I mean by that is meaning I'm on top of it at least. You know, I can actually get it to a situation where I can perform it live and no one's going to turn around in the band and go, what's that? And people in the audience aren't going to suddenly spill their beer or choke on their pizzas, you know. So that's what I mean, because we're always perfecting. So, you know, spending time and facing those, I don't want to say demons, that's quite a harsh term, but facing it that you can't do. Let's say double strokes or daddy mammies, as they called them back in the day. So with those double strokes, accenting the first one is pretty tough, but it's easier than accenting the second note of the two. Right, right, left, left, right, right, left, left, and so on. So, you know, you should try that. That was one of the things I saw Thomas Lang do many years ago. And I thought, yeah, pulling out the second note will help with your sticking and your handling. I get that. But I never really did it. But over the last 6-7 years, it's been part of my regime. And it's definitely helped my doubles so much. It's not something that happened quickly overnight, but that's also part of the fun of this thing. Is it's none of it is a quick fix. You know, it's not like going to a cheat mode on a PlayStation or you know, Nintendo game or whatever. It's not as easy as that. You have to put in the time. Hence why I say you turn off everything. Sometimes I have the TV on actually with the sound down and just let films roll in the background. I'm not really paying attention to them. I'm still focusing on what I'm doing, but it's something else there. I don't know. I just quite enjoy it. And I heard that John Lennon used to do similar things, and Elvis Presley, bizarrely, as they were working on other things. Anyway, I'd probably save more electric if I turned it off, but anyway, whatever. Yeah, so working on those things you can't do and things that I can't do, for me, really helps me feel more creative because I'm actually in where I am in my life, sort of 35 years of drumming, sometimes you can feel a little stale, but sometimes perfecting something as daft as the the second accent of the Daddy Mammy double stroke and doing it quite well and noticing it in your playing, is like a little tick. It's like a yeah, I'll take that one for the team. That's brilliant. That's another notch that I've got, because you think, oh, I know all the rudiments, I know how to do this. You don't, and when you sort of reinvent things in a different way like that, all of a sudden you feel like that 12-year-old kid again. I mean, I started when I was 9, but when I was 12, I was already up on the rudiments and stuff and feeling quite confident. Um, but now where I am at 55 this year, 56 this year, in July, um, it could be very easy to think, oh, rudiments, blah, there's nothing new I can get from those. It's so not true. I remember about 5 years ago just finding the single paradiddle phrased as an eighth note triplet. That blew my mind. But my God, what did it open? It opened different ideas on the snare drum for phrasing. Then you put those ideas onto the tom-toms for drum fills, for soloing or whatever, developing more phrases off the ride and snare drum in a jazz feel because it's eighth note triplet, so it's in a swing feel. Also straightening it up as well, so playing it on a quaver groove as well. So, I mean, obviously you won't straighten it up too much, but you still play your eighth note triplet, but over the feel of the quarter note, eighth note groove on the hats. It opened up so much, and then you make it linear, and that was a whole trip. And that was probably, maybe it's more than 5 years ago. I still think COVID was just like the other day, so I forget with time. Ever since COVID, everything's a bit of a blur, isn't it? But yeah, so you're always constantly finding stuff, and it was difficult. And being tongue-tied is a good thing. I think you should always challenge yourself, get tongue-tied, work through it, get out the other side, because that's when you suddenly get that feeling of, oh my God, I did it. I've now got this. I can now play this at a certain tempo. This is feeling good. And then all the different neurons and stuff, that endorphins or whatever kick off in the brain, and things start firing, and all of a sudden you remember why you're a human being and what we are capable of when we put our mind to it, if we're not always stuck to a screen. But let's not get into that, because I get stuck on screens and I quite enjoy it. But there are times you have to go back, and every now and again I see those reels on YouTube of, hey, remember when life was like this? And they're playing some DX7 keyboard chords and stuff, and it makes you feel all very 80s for my age group. You feel, when I say 80s, I don't mean the age 80. You feel very nostalgic and want to go back to the 1980s. And it's saying, remember when days were like this, and Saturday morning cartoons, and you had this, and bikes on the lawn, and the telephone was a telephone, proper telephone. And anyway, all that stuff, which is a little bit cheesy, I know, but sometimes I think, yeah. And when I get into those practice sessions in here, I often go back to that 9-year-old child again when I was a kid. I can still feel what it felt like when I first realized how to play a 4-bar exercise of crotchets with the rests. My dad would put rests in there. And when I first understood what the rest was and how it worked, and I could play that 4-bar loop, and he'd come home from work and I'd say, is this right? That excitement, that buzz, is something I guess I've always still been looking for. I guess I still do. And even though he's not here anymore, I think he's still watching me from up above. So hopefully still very proud of what I'm doing. And yeah, but that's really, really, really important. I think that's important for self, all of us, to do that. Also, use pad time to work on rudiments and their relationship with each other. So I sort of mentioned rudiments. Work on stuff that you think, single Ratamakieu, I've never really bothered with that, or any of the Ratamakieu family. So if there's any of those rudiment families you've not really bothered with much or explored much, there's even compound strokes. Now, I couldn't play one of those if there was $1 million there and someone said play a compound stroke. I couldn't remember, but and I still can't remember how to play them, but I did once. And they were in the Buddy Rich snare drum book in the back, near the back of the book. I remember these compound strokes. But taking any of those things is really important, and just taking them and working on them. So learn it as a rudiment first, very sort of clinically on the pad. You can put the foot and the bass and the hi-hat in there if you want. If you're sat on a stool and your feet can move. If you're just sat in front of the TV with one of those small pads on a stand in front of you or on your lap, you still tap your feet on the floor. But get your hands on there first, get the dynamics of the accenting, the note values, understand the time signature, what the feel should be, play it nice and slow and get all of the movements up together. Then you can add the feet. And then what's really cool is that the other point I mentioned here is their relationship with each other. So then get those rudiments, whatever it is, and try and pair them up with something else. Now, sometimes it could be a bit of a car crash. They're not going to work. But most of the time they will work. I don't think off the top of my head there's any that really wouldn't mash together too well with some thought and some creativity. And again, that's where the old brain kicks in and we think, oh, I could put this next to this. I could play some drags. I could play some flams. They're pretty close to each other. It's just one stroke difference. Maybe I could play some flam patterns with flamadiddles or whatever and flam taps, and then I could go into some single drags, double drags, drag a diddle and stuff like that and put them together. And you do it very slowly. We can easily watch loads of cats, as they say, playing it fast online, and military and marching drummers, and it's beautiful. But remember, they've had years of practice to get there, and they were where you were once. Get used to how they feel. Move some of the accents around. Create your own rudiments by moving those accents around. Now, okay, the sticking will still be the same rudiment, but maybe because you're not accenting the first of a drag-a-diddle or a flamadiddle, maybe if you accented the second one and then the third stroke and then the fourth, because you can accent any of those paradiddle strokes, right, left, right, right, left, right, left, left. Doesn't always have to be the first of every rudiment. Now, that's usually quite common. So, then you can start to think, oh, I'm inventing my own. Invent a 13, 14, 15, 16, 18, 19 stroke roll by just playing the strokes up to that number. All this stuff is out there and up for grabs. And as I say, you will stumble across some phrases that you love from putting these rudiments and stitching them together. Then, of course, once you've got a few little patterns that you like working off of each other, then you can take to the drum set and turn them into phrases and fills. That's the fun part, I suppose, if you look at it that way. Then you can look at the tonality of what we're doing. And remember the first time that you played a paradiddle and you took the hands off one sound source and put it on another, and then you played it and you realized that was a melody over here and this was another melody over here. That blew my mind. Same with the inverted single paradiddle. It was like, what? The inverted paradiddle? That's mental that it does these things and it has this inner groove and this inner pulse, whichever hand you focus on, and whether you put it on a cowbell or a china or a tom or a snare or a tambourine, or an SPDS trigger and stuff, whatever, it becomes something different each time you move it around. And, that feeling is what I'm constantly trying to chase in my stomach and in my head. When it all kicks off, the body suddenly glows and like ET, and it's like, whoa, this is happening. And this is all through work process, and this process you can do every day or every other day, whatever you can manage. Again, those stories of people practicing for like Tony Williams for 10 hours a day or whatever, and Dave Weckl 7 hours a day. Brilliant if they had the time to do it, and they're genius drummers, and rightly so. But we have to deal with what we've got, make it our own. Like yesterday I was doing it, certainly not for 10 hours or 7 hours, but I did it for a few hours, created something which I posted, and I felt really good about it. So that's a positive. That's a really good thing to be able to do. And we chase that feeling each time. And you need to chase that feeling each time you get on the pad, because it's once you've tried it once, it sort of infects you with that. You just want to keep chasing and chasing and chasing. I've also got here, use the pad as a meditative thing. Yeah, I think that's really important. The older I've getting, touch wood, long may that continue, please. And I find that time on the pad can be kind of very fulfilling in different ways. So once I've stitched up some ideas, and I've put them together, like I'm saying, rudiments that work together, accenting phrases, this could be a time signature thing with any sticking to whatever. Once it's working, get the click on, make sure I can play it with the click, I understand it, but there are sometimes I come to the pad, and I just want to play. And some of those are captured on some of my really old videos from a couple of years ago, where I'm sat here and I put the camera up higher. And I'm sometimes sat in my dressing gown, I've noticed, sticking ideas. And they're just ideas of the day. And I like doing that as well. So this meditative thing is almost like you use it as just a bit like when you meditate, you let all the thoughts come in and out. And on the pad, just let all the thoughts wander through your head and through your hands and through the sticks. You never know. Some will be repeated stuff. All of a sudden you might be playing for a while and I'll be looking out the window at the garden, which needs mowing actually. But I look at the garden, and all of a sudden, I'll drift, or I'll look at the TV with the sound down, as I say, and something will happen. Um, and I don't always record my practice like this, but I try and log it, and I'll just stop and say, "That's nice. What did I just discover there?" And I'll go back and I'll get it. And sometimes I will put on the camera and say, "Right, I need to grab this now." Sometimes I'll just put on the voice note thing and catch it as a voice note, and then say, "Oh, that was me playing." Da, 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 da. But yeah, that sort of time with you, the sticks in the pad, is really important. Away from the stuff I've just mentioned, just playing, just blowing. Is that what the Americans say? Just blowing on the pad. Yeah, I think that's important. I think there's a lot of things that happen in the silence like that, when it, again, just you, the pad, no screens, no phones, just working on your hands, working on ideas, watching them flow. None of them are boring. Sometimes we look at things and say, "Oh, nothing exciting happened today." But I can guarantee when I hear that from my students, I so wish sometimes I'd filmed that part of a lesson to see what they were doing before they got to that point where they thought, "Oh, this isn't very good." Because there was some great stuff in there. But because it's stuff we sort of maybe know we can play, and we're not excited as much, we don't get that excitement, endorphin kick off or whatever in our heads, and the body's suddenly, let's say, glows like ET, and you think, "Oh, this is the moment." Not every moment is like that. When they happen, beautiful, but there's a lot of moments in between that, and I notice that in my own playing. Like if I'm like last week, I'm tracking. Oh, I didn't realize I did that. Or, and it could be just me playing nothing, if that makes sense. Me just grooving through a moment where another Rob maybe would have played a fill or something, but my head saying, "Oh, you didn't do that. You're going straight through. Oh, brilliant." Or could go the other way, think, "Crikey, I didn't know I did that little thing. That's nice." That was a moment, sort of spur reaction to something. Um, and that's what you get on the pad. So maybe you should record a few of them just to see, because you need to note those amazing moments that seem like boring moments because you know it, but actually you think about all the work you've done to get to that point, to get to that fluidity and relaxation on the pad, and just to be able to play that's a thing in itself. So yeah, don't be afraid of that. And as I've got older, I was just saying, I'm more into the idea of Indian music. Again, I got it could be corny, but I got it through listening to the Beatles, Revolver and Sergeant Pepper's, listening to George Harrison, songs like Love You Too and Within You, Without You, and that kind of thing. And then later on reading about John Coltrane and his kind of, a lot of that stuff with Coltrane, is to do with God and stuff. I'm spiritual, but I don't believe in any one specific God. Particularly, I don't. I think if you've got a combination of all of them, put them together, it'd be the perfect thing. But yeah. Anyway, but yes. So some of his teachings, when he starts relating to God, I don't feel that attached to. But the theories of what he's talking about, Coltrane, and I can hear it in his playing, the way he's searching all the time and constantly looking for the next thing. And I think when I go to the pad, I'm in my own little way, I'm trying to do a similar thing in that meditative process. Just let all the information come out. Some of it's going to be ramble, some of it's going to be, thought out stuff that I'm just regurgitating. Some of it is going to come out and I'm going to get to like what we call a brick wall. I'm going to play, and then I'm going to stop and go, "Oh, why did I stop there? That was flowing." And then I can go back and retrace my steps and put that right and think, "Why was that? Oh, it's because I can't stick this, so maybe I should work on that." And finally, just use the time to try out new ideas, both rudiment and groove based. I kind of touched on that anyway, I think. But yeah, let me know what you think about what I've been talking about. Let me know about your practice regime. If you've got any questions or any things that you'd like to do, please leave it in the comments below. Comments these days are a little bit dry, so come on, guys, give me a few things to work with here if you want to. But I hope you found that of interest. No matter what, try and get some time with your practice pad, you, the sticks, and the pad at any point. But if this has helped you in other ways, that's brilliant. If not, just to get you to do that would be brilliant. So as ever, thanks for tuning in, guys. Like, share, subscribe. As I say, it really helps. I really appreciate everything that's happening. The channel is growing nicely, and I'm working on getting more content out there for you as quickly as I can and as often as I can. So have a great week, and I'll see you on the next video.